I think this is a good time for houseplant conversation. Um, I think most of you know me, Roxanne from Airy Mountain in Barkhamsted. Um, I thought today, instead of talking about individual house plants or doing a slideshow where everything is green, I don't know how you can learn from that. So I think a conversation about house plants in general, what they need, um, and then feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to answer. I brought a selection of odds and ends um, so that we can have when as I lecture, I can tell you different things about houseplants. You know, to every person, a house plant is different. For example, here you have a lot of tropicals, but this is a perennial. So very often, uh, perennials will come into the home to be grown as um, a house plant. This is a primula. So you see a primrose. This will grow in your garden as a perennial year after year. Likes a shady, kind of moist location, very early spring. Um, I you I should have brought a japonica as well. A primula japonica, also grown as a houseplant. The difference is it's referred to also as a candelabra primrose. The flowers are small, and when the flower fades, another from the center of the flower, a spike comes up and makes another flower. And when that fades, another spike comes up, makes another flower. So referred to as a candelabra primrose, but a perennial. Um, you see the ferns. Many ferns can be brought into the house and grown as a house plant. This particular one I like. It's a rabbit's foot fern. You can see as it grows, the little feet come out, very soft. So some perennials can be grown as houseplants. Um, if you purchase, for example, a primula, primrose, um, just know that if you plan to grow it as a house plant, what it's going to need is basically what it needed outside as far as light, water, heat. So we're going to cover just things that you need to know about plants in order to get them through the season. I think a lot of you, how many of you are houseplant growers? Most of you have houseplants. I think you're noticing now probably the decline in your plants, um, probably some insect problems. How many of you have tried to grow rosemary in the house? Yeah, rosemary is a wonderful plant, and I was going to bring a topiary, but I just had too much to deal with. I didn't bring it. Um, but we'll talk about getting those types of plants through the season. I think we would consider some herbs as house plants as well, um, because culinary herbs, such as people trying to grow basils and rosemaries and thymes in the house through the winter, we're going to incorporate speaking about herbal herbs as well, because they are a house plant if they're grown in the house. All right. So I think what I wanted to start here was talking about. I want. I really like the history of plants. I studied under Rudy Favaretti, who uh, For Every House a Garden was one of the books he wrote. Um, he taught uh, and refurbished gardens at for Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, any of the big places, the old places. He certainly kibitzed on how those gardens were established. So I would love to one time do a lecture on the style of colonial and Victorian garden style. I think style is to fit with a home or a building important. So I lecture a lot to garden clubs, but I've helped many historical societies design and set up their gardens. Um, but as far as Victorian houseplants, and I'd like to start the conversation there, Victorians, and we'll talk Victorians here in America. Um, you know, as a people, we worked really hard to build this nation and to build our gardens. And colonial gardens were uh, the best you could get. There were no garden shops to go and get a plant. Plants and seeds came in the pockets of the people, in the trunks of the people. And there are records of wealthy landowners trading many acres of land for a single fruit tree. That's um, how poor our resources were for establishing gardens. So in colonial times, everything was kind of packed together in the house. You weren't growing any plants. You were more keeping the plants away from the wildlife and trying to get it through the winter so that you could have something out of doors later. With the onset of the Victorian age, um, there was an influx of uh, migrant labor from Ireland and such that came here. And it made it possible, everybody looking for a job, made it possible to have housekeepers and gardeners and cooks and such in the home, which meant the people who owned the home and the land had more leisure time. So with the leisure time, of course, they wanted everyone to know they had leisure time. So they built big porches around the house where they would sit. And as people strolled on by, they'd say, "Hey, Heidi ho, we're out here sitting. We're not out there working. So aren't we awesome?" And then their plant material began to reflect that. Think of the architecture of a Victorian home, how in colonial times the windows were small. Yes, glass was expensive. There was a glass tax. All of that played to how the homes were built and maintained. But with Victorian times, the windows were big, floor to ceiling, nice big windows, wraparound porch. So with those big windows, a lot of light coming into the house. So that changed the interior of the homes from a colonial standard. So with that, the Victorians began to love to. They had free time, leisure time. So the ladies learned to draw. The people learned about plants, and they loved anything that looked exotic, anything that looked like it came from not here. They loved caladiums, the big colorful leaves. This one here, and it's the smallest one I had. A big Rex begonias, an absolute favorite of mine. Anyone growing Rexes? Ooh, missing out on a really great plant. On a really great plant. This is just I've got the Rex begonias are known for their fancy leaves, very much like caladiums. But a Rex begonia is more set up for indoor growing, where a caladium is from a bulb under the ground. This is an entire rhizome root system. So propagation is different. But the Victorians liked anything that looked like they've traveled the world, and a lot of them did, but they looked anything that was exotic. So houseplants began to come in because A, they could keep the houses warmer. B, they had light windows um, in where they could grow the plants. So the whole thought of houseplants um, really emerged. The scented geranium um, became a very popular plant. Do you, any of you grow scenteds? Oh, I know. I'm going to help you all out. You're gonna change your attitudes. Um, scented so the Victorians liked things that looked like they were from other places. Yeah. Um, but they also liked uh, to believe they could control nature. So what came about with the Victorians was topiaries, very popular with Victorians. And I couldn't bring any because my topiaries are quite large. Um, anything that you would train up to look like a tree. Um, the plants Europs, no, um, scented geraniums, um, anything. I do a lot of rosemaries, um, lavenders, anything like that that can be snipped and trained so that you can show the world that you've got control over the plants. And we're not talking bonsai. Bonsai is a whole different style, a whole different road that you're going down. Training topiaries is easy, but it was a it's a takes a long time to establish a topiary. But they liked plants that were exotic and crazy looking, big leaves, unusual. Now remember how the Victorian women dressed: long skirts, big bustles. How do you get through a doorway? So everyone said, "Oh, they smelled so good. They were so refined." So they didn't smell good. What smelled good were all the scented geraniums that they grew in the house. There's probably about 40 varieties: strawberry, lemon. I'm going to pass this one around just so you can get to know her. What this one is, Lady Plymouth. What what um, what they like is for you to touch their leaves, rub the leaf, smell your hand. But you can get uh, like 40 different varieties: lemon scented. You're not really growing them for the flowers, but the flowers on some of them are small, looking like do you know how would I describe it? A part of a geranium. They're 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 small. Yeah, that's not what you're growing them for. But the scented geraniums were very popular with the Victorians. A very Victorian plant. The Rex begonias, caladiums, anything with a big leaf. So that was a style for the Victorians. I just want to, okay. So a lot of things came in. Um, there's a perennial called Streptocarpus, a Streptocarpella. This is a gorgeous, it's a perennial. Um, it flowers, they call it a lady slipper, very ruffled, a mix of colors, low to the ground. Leaves are more lance shaped. This is a Streptocarpus. The Streptocarpellas are perennial, but were very popular with the Victorians. I was going to bring one, but the basket wasn't big enough. So when you're looking for something unusual, the Streptocarpus is really a nice house plant. But let's talk about. I'm sorry. It's also very hard to kill. Oh yeah you could yeah they're hard to kill. Doesn't it? Doesn't it? But I warned you in the beginning that I would use the Latin names for things because it's easier to reference. Um, okay, so let's go to what we're talking about in the house. The first thing I'd like to talk about is your choice of pots for your plant. You'll notice that a lot of mine are in plastic. I only have one that I brought that was in terracotta. Let's talk about how to choose a pot and why you would choose that pot. Um, thank you. Take a look at terracotta. Terracotta is a porous material, so they dry out quickly. They don't hold moisture. What kind of plant would like terracotta the most would be your succulents. Now we echeverias, um, yeah, any of the cactuses, uh, even a lot of the, well, this is an aloe here. Um, they would do very well in a terracotta pot because it's porous and it dries out quickly. When you go to a plastic pot, plastic retains more moisture than a terracotta. Okay, so when you're choosing, and you say, well, I got this old pot that I've been laying around, what should I put into it? Put in something that wouldn't mind drying out a little between waterings. That would be great for your succulents. But if you've got terracotta that's been glazed, that's an entirely different pot. It's more like plastic, which retains the moisture. These are grown, I grow in plastic because I grow these, and in the greenhouse, this is what works for my grow system. Um, this square 4 inch I like. So choosing a pot. Now, some plants need a lot of water. Some plants like to be dry. So you need to know what you're growing. For example, if you look at, let me think, the alocasias. Alocasias are very big leaves. Um, I'm trying to think of the name of them. You'll see them out in the gardens and in pots when the weather is very warm. A very large leaf, um, very, I don't know, almost to me like a snake head. If you understand, blue Hawaii is one. There's a lot of different varieties. The leaves are very fancy. They're very large, but they need a lot of water. Yeah, the elephant ears. Um, so the when you're growing something like an alocasia that needs a lot of water, a plastic pot is a good choice. Now, if you are growing in your house, and we send out a lot for memorial kind of house plants, a dish garden, and you take a look at those dish gardens, most of them do not have a hole in the bottom for drainage. Um, and I think that's not a good thing because we, as Americans or people in general, tend to overwater everything. So what happens when you overwater is the root systems begin to rot away. So you're looking at your house plant, you've watered it and it looks bad, and you water it and it turns yellow, and you water it and it looks worse, and you say, phew, I better give it more water. What's happening is all the roots in there are rotting away. Have you ever been gifted a plant and you just weren't expecting it and didn't have time to plant it? Or you dug something up and didn't have time to plant it, left it in a 5 gallon bucket with some water, and a few days later you come to it and it stinks to the high heavens? What that is the roots are rotting. So we kill more of them. Like if you can't get to it, take it out of the water, you know, stick it in a brown paper bag to keep the air off of the roots, and until you can put it back in the water in 4 or 5 days. What we do when we buy in a new fruit tree or plant like that, we soak it in the water for a few hours to get the root system to rehydrate. But plants take up their nutrients through the smallest of the roots. That's that's what gets sent out looking for nutrients in water. So if they're always sitting in a bath of water, they just rot away. There's no way to take up nutrients. So when you're growing a plant, you notice when this, or maybe you didn't, when the scented went around, it was really dry. I tend to, with my houseplants, let them dry out between waterings. I would rather see them go a little limp from being dry than go a little limp from being wet. Okay, so it's good to put them on a cycle. Like in my shop, I mean, I have hundreds and hundreds of plants. I water on a Monday, and I spot water. Not everybody gets watered. Not everybody needs water. Okay, so you have to know what the plant needs. If it's a shade loving plant, let's say you read up on a plant, um, a Rex begonia, uh, under, and it's referred to as an understory plant. That means it's used to being. How many of you grow hanging baskets of begonias in the summer? They're really good for bringing hummingbirds and such to the garden. Those are considered understory plants. Those are grown where they grow naturally. They're not up at the tree canopy at the top getting lots of sunlight. They're tucked in underneath and they're getting dappled light, small amounts of light. That's what they are used to. The leaves on a plant, you see how big this leaf is in comparison? I mean, these leaves get like this when it's big. Uh, they're like a solar collector. So that would indicate to you that they are an understory plant. All right. So knowing what you're growing and knowing what it needs will help you decide how much light. All right. Very often there's a tag in the pot, and it will say things like full sun. Well, that one, put it right at the window. But if it says bright light or indirect light, which these are colopasias, and you grow them. I love these are one of my favorites, and there's so many varieties. But it's green on green, sometimes a burgundy back. Um, they like this spath. Uh, most of these want a bright light, but not direct light. If you put them up by the window, you'll fry them. Okay, so know the difference between direct light, which means full on, or if it says bright light or indirect light, move it away from the light source a bit, like somewhere in the room. That's why this kind of plant is so good in a corner of a living room or somewhere that's not getting a lot of light. As long as there is some bright light that happens sometime during the day, they don't require full on sun. They'll get what they need from what's in the room. All right. So when you're deciding on your house plant, just read the little tag or ask somebody uh, what the light requirement is. Oh yeah, yeah. When you're growing by lights or you want to supplement the lights, look for something with a blue or red spectrum, and that'll be fine. The closer you bring the lights to the plant, the more they're going to intake. But in some light systems, the more heat they're going to encounter too, which could not be a good thing. Okay, but yeah, you can use an artificial light. A lot of people growing houseplants and truly invested in them will have like a spotlight grow light over them. There's a lot of nice systems out there, but a lot of systems cost money. I'm a Yankee, so I'm more inclined to use the windows, you know, um, for my light. But understanding what the plant needs as far as light is paramount. Okay. The next thing that let me see. Okay, the next thing I wanted to talk about was placement in the house. Um, we know that we talked last week that an east light is a cooler light, a morning light, cooler light. So something like an African violet would probably do very well in an east lit window. But if you moved it to a south window, it would be too harsh, too hard on the plant. They wouldn't do well there. Okay. So if we remember that the light in the east in the morning is cool and good for, um, depending on where your house is, what you get for light, that is very good for low light, indirect light plants. If you move from the east to the south, that's hot, scorching, strong light, and the things that would do well there are more of your succulents, your echeverias, your aloe plants, um, desert-like plants, anything like that would do well in the south. When you move to a west window, this is where the heat really comes in, and you can really do damage to your plants by too much heat and light from the west. So be careful of that west window. Don't be tricked. And then if you move to the north, normally the light in the north, and I would say this is north, you're not going to get much, you're going to get some. This would be a lovely place for an understory plant, streptocarpus, and I think your Rex begonias would do pretty well there too, um, if there were enough light. So when you're thinking about where you're putting your plants, remember placement in the windows, depending on what time of day they're getting their light, will help you to keep your plants stronger, healthier.
What about an orchid? What would be the best light?
Well, orchids take a lot of light. They take a lot of light, and people who grow orchids, they will run their lights even at night. If you go by a greenhouse and you'll see it glowing red or blue or purple, they're supplementing light. They take quite a bit of light. I would think for me, I would never put one right in the window. I'd move it in a bit so it's not getting that heat, that scorch, but the brightness. Um, yeah. Knowing, for example, I was talking to you about also bringing in herbs and that kind of thing. I winter over probably 100 rosemary topiaries every year. Um, they they rosemary's like it kind of cold. The problem with New Englanders, we bring our rosemaries in and we kill them. We keep them alive for a couple of weeks and then they're dead. For me, when I'm growing my topiaries, it take me years to get them to topiary form where I've got a nice stem. It takes a few years to get to that. The secret here is to keep that rosemary cool. So I have mine. When you open the shop door, the cold air comes in. It's nowhere near a heat system. And those of you using wood stoves, don't put a rosemary anywhere in that same room because it will just suck the moisture right out of it. I've had trays filled with pebbles and then lots of water so that the pot of the rosemary is not sitting in water and rotting the roots. We talked about that a minute ago. Um, but as the water evaporates around the plant, it benefits the plant. So if you're having some issues with plants drying out too much, try a tray filled with stones and the plants on top of the stones so that you keep a bed of water there that never touches the root system. This is a very good way to keep moisture around a plant. But for me, I've got too many, and we'd be tripping over them. So what I do is I just turn the heat off at night. Like I keep the heat. I turn the heat in my shop like way down, so that they're not too much heat. Also, putting them against a window. If you put your hands to your window and you feel cold, well, that's good. That would really benefit your herbs. Remember, most culinary herbs, I can't say all, but the majority of the culinary herbs that we grow inside as a house plant for, for us are Mediterranean. So they're used to clinging to the side of rocks. Um, they're used to having a lot of moisture around them and heat. Lack of heat can really kill some plants. And I thought I would bring a basket full of those to show you. Um, I've got some alocasias that I didn't keep warm enough and they've just collapsed. I have some other house plants that they, but it was them or the rosemaries, and um, you know, sucks to be one of my plants because they're not all treated equally. Um, but usually you will see if the house is not warm enough a collapse of a plant, and that could be because too much water, not enough heat. So you have to know what the plant needs. And with the internet, holy moly, we all have access to that, find out what they need. But for me, growing too cold has destroyed a lot of my plants.
How do you feel about apps for plants?
I think they're great, aren't they?
Great.
Yeah, I think if you have an app and you're not afraid to use it, go for it. But in the end, you're responsible. You can't blame it on the app. You know what I mean? Poke around and see what everyone's saying. Look at more than one or two sites and see. I mean, I've been a gardener my entire life, and I still reference plants before I do anything. What temperature? See, they like to be grown at a certain temperature when they're rooting in. So if you, and we'll talk about transplanting in a minute. They like to be grown at a certain temperature. Once they have rooted in, you'll change the temperature and maybe the location of the plant. How many of you know regal geraniums, the Martha Washingtons? Oh, again, regal geraniums are a very Victorian plant. Um, they have big leaves. Um, the flowers are clusters of large uh, flowers that are grouped together, and the colors are like pink and burgundy, or purple and white, or white on white. They're beautiful, and they love and these are really popular with the Victorians. They love the cool weather. So I always have regal geraniums for sale on Easter and on Mother's Day because they will live for generations. They are beautiful. But here is a plant that, for me, I start in the greenhouse. I'll run it at a certain place in the greenhouse so it's getting really warm night temperatures. Um, and then that's to help the rooting. As soon as that plant's rooted and I give a little tug and it doesn't go anywhere, I drop it right onto the ground because we know it's colder on the ground. So, in order to even initiate blossoms, you have to run that plant at around 50 to 55 for 4 weeks. So, in a greenhouse, it's hard to do when you're growing a lot of things. So, you have to look for the coldest spot. Well, I know where that is, and that's where those Marthas are going to go. But they go there at a different time. So get to know your plants and have favorites. Play favorites. You don't have to grow everything. Grow what you really like. I'm myself really like the Victorian. I love the Rex begonias. I adore scented geraniums. And I think I like them because no one else does. And it's like, I'll be darned if I'm going to let them fade into obscurity because they're gorgeous plants. So when you're taking cuttings, I just want to make sure that I'm okay. So when you're taking cuttings of plants, different plants for propagation, any of you big on propagating? Yeah, right? It's so much fun. If you haven't started propagating, you should. Uh, Planting seed is propagation, but taking cuttings is so much fun. Today, what's getting clipped will be my lemon verbena is happening today, and my fig trees. Oh yeah,
My kid hasn't started to.
does
Um,
doesn't need to.
It doesn't?
Are we talking fig, like eat that fig? Like I
Well,
love this fig, want to eat it?
I haven't,
No.
no, I think it's fruit, but mine hasn't fruited. It's in a 5 gallon bucket.
What kind is it? Do you know what the name on it is?
I inherited it
Oh.
from somebody.
But you think it's a fig? It's got a big fig leaf?
Yeah, it's got a fig leaf, it's not.
Yeah, it's a small plant. It's got like, they told us five, make sure 5 stems.
But it was supposed to fruit? Oh.
Here's a nice plant. Okay, thanks.
Oh, but it was inherited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, propagation is a really good time. But depending on what you're going to propagate, the propagation changes. So let's do propagation last because we can really go down a rabbit hole there. What I'd like to do next is to talk about the different problems that you have with insects on your houseplants. And I think this is what you've come to listen to. Houseplants are going to attract insects. If you bring in plants from other places, I once got a plant from a place, and when I got it home, I recognized that it had scale on it. Well, I was shocked and took it right to the dumpster. Broke my heart. But you can't have that stuff in your house. Not good house guests. So examine your plants before you bring them in. Yeah? Plants, there are a lot of chemicals that you can use to deal with your houseplants. You know that I don't think that's a good idea. I think that if you have half a brain, you can do battle with most everything. And on occasion, you have to sacrifice something. You have a choice: sacrifice or chemical. And I think you need to choose well. So let's talk about the things that will damage a houseplant. First of all, when you are choosing the soil and repotting, houseplants should never be bumped up to a container that's more than about an inch bigger than what it's in. So if you have a 4-inch pot, don't go above. You should go to a 5. But if you don't have a 5, do not go above a 6. The reason is a lot of plants do best if they are pot bound. The way you can tell if a plant is pot bound is if you water it, and we need to be careful here and listen to what I'm saying. If you water a plant and the water runs out the bottom, normally people take that as a sign of being root bound. Your hanging baskets, let's talk so we understand each other. In the summer, you have a hanging basket. You bring the hose over and you water it. Yeah? And the water comes out the bottom and you say, wow, overfilled it. It's good. It's watered. It's not watered. What's happened is your substrate, your soil, has dried out so much that it cannot take in water. So, what you need to do is water well, water everybody, and then come by and water everybody again. The first water is to introduce the fact that water's coming. The second water is so that the plant will take it up. In my greenhouse, when I'm planting, and I'm doing thousands and thousands of plants, I water the soil 3 times so that, and when you look at it, it's just riding on the top. It hasn't sunken down. It's not soaking wet. Take a look. Scrape the top and see how far down your water's gone. It's riding on the top. Have you used a potting soil and watered it and just have it float? That's standard fare for most potting mixes. So this tells you if it's floating, it's not wet. It's not taking up moisture. So it might take a couple of it might take a couple of waters. It might take a couple of days uh, to to get that wet. So for me in the greenhouse, what I'll do is I'll fill all my 1020s, do a whole bed of them, and I'll water once, I'll water twice, I'll water a third time, and I'll come back the next day and water again. Then I know it's starting to sink down into the pots. And only then will I plant. If you think you're going to put plants into a soil, water it, and you're done, it's not working. So water, and we're talking when you're establishing a new plant, right? Water very, very well. Um, what I do in the summer, in the heat of July, when you need to water a couple times a day, it's so hot. What I do is I'll take a 5-gallon pail and I'll submerge the plant, and you'd be so surprised. You put the whole plant in the pail, and you'll see so many air bubbles coming up. Well, that tells you there was no water in that plant. So when you think you've watered because water's coming out, maybe you haven't. It's possible that you have, but chances are good you haven't. So the same with house plants. The best way is to put your finger in here and it's like, this looks dry on the top, but the soil is evenly moist. It's beautiful. It's dark. Um, that's perfectly watered because I'm running my shop cold. You don't want to overwater. When you think about your plants, and I'm trying to speak in general terms here. Um, I don't know if you run your house at 80 and you're at 40. It's hard to have that conversation. So we'll cover it all. When you go outside in the wintertime and your feet are dry and your boots don't leak, you feel all right. You can spend a lot of time out there. But you go outside in your slippers or shoes that are not appropriate and your feet are wet, you're miserable. How long can you stay out there? Not at all, right? The same goes for plants. Their root system are their feet. So if they're soaking wet and cold, they're miserable. Unless they come from that. They're an Arctic plant, an alpine plant. They might like that. But if they're soaking wet and the house is cold, the root system's really cold. And that's why the alocasias and a lot of the house plants collapse because the roots are just too cold. So the way that if you don't want to raise the temperature in the room, see, and this is what I do, I want to keep the room cool because I want the rosemaries to do well. I keep the room cool and I water less. So you have to teach yourself what your plants need. Um, Overwatering in a cold room will kill most everything. Underwatering in a hot room will kill most everything. So you have to equate water amounts with the temperature that you're holding the room at. Yeah. So I suggest to people who are growing herbs and who are growing rosemaries to grow them up against a window where it's cold. Um, you'll get more light on the plant and you'll get a better growth on them. But remember to pull back a little on the watering if it's cold. Any questions on that? Because that's a really important point. So water to temperature ratios. Learn to judge that, and your plants will be healthier. Yeah. When to fertilize? You don't want to fertilize when you bring those things into the house for the winter, or you don't want to fertilize and encourage a lot of growth that you need to care for in the winter. my opinion, the best time to fertilize is like right about now, March. Um, how many of you grow uh, hanging baskets of, let's say, vines, tropicals, and bring them in and try to overwinter them for the following year? None of you? What a bunch of babies. More adventure. More adventure, folks. Yeah. So the best time to fertilize a house plant would be, I would think, about now, when you want to encourage new growth. A lot of people will continuously fertilize, but the plant is not getting enough light. See, light's really important to uh, the way plants take up nutrients, the way they use it. And they know it's March. You can't fool them and tell them this is the light of August. You can't. You They know. So uh, don't fertilize your house plants until the light begins to amp up, until there's more volume to the light. Um, Otherwise, you're just encouraging a lot of growth that is going to be attacked by things like aphids and spider mites and other beasts. A good way to tell that you have an issue with an insect is when you're talking to your plants and you're touching them and telling them how nice they are, how good they smell. If you notice like a shiny sap on the leaf, that is caused by a piercing, sucking kind of insect. Sometimes they attack the top, but very often the bottom is where you'll find them. So there are several ways to deal with them that don't include using chemicals. What I would say is, if you understand the life cycle of an insect, it's easier to, if you know your enemy, easier to do battle. Yeah. So most insects have a life cycle of about 3 weeks: egg, growth, destruction, egg, growth, destruction, like that. So if you're going to, for me, let's, and I've never had a problem with my sentence, but this is easier for me to hold and to explain to you. If you have a plant like this, and you're noticing a shininess to the leaf that shouldn't be there, like a sap, you know, it doesn't take much to notice a change in a leaf. That indicates to you that someone's piercing and sucking somewhere on the plant. So we talked about not using chemicals. So how else can we get rid of them? The easiest way would be to prune anything dead on the plant and get rid of that. Keep the top of the pot clean so there's nowhere for anyone to hide or to breed or to lay eggs. Yeah, the sand on the top, or a fine vermiculite to keep like those, they're little gnats, like moisture gnats. You see them? Yeah. If you make a barrier between them and the soil, um, you can discourage them and wipe them out. But remember my 3 week talk. So if I took this little darling, let's say she had something on her I didn't like, I take her over to the sink and I use a dish soap and water and wash the plant, or even submerge the plant and to wash it. That would mean protecting the soil so it doesn't wash out of the pot. That's easy enough to do. You can put a paper bag over there, a baggie, close it up, and then wash it. Because insects, most insects do not have a lung system. They breathe through their bodies. All right. Knowing this is golden, because all you need to do is encapsulate the insect in a soapy film takes about 9 seconds for them to succumb. All right. So if you've done that with just a soapy water and then rinse well, but remember that insects are tiny, and where they like to lay eggs is like in the crooks here between. So make sure that where the leaf meets the stem, you wash well. Huh? And you can leave it on there for a minute or two and then rinse it and know that you've done some damage. But it's going to take you about 3 weeks to eradicate most of it. I'm going to tell you one thing that I have found that works wonders on aphids. Aphids are a soft-bodied insect, so anytime I plant certain plants that I know are aphid prone, and usually prone to, let's say if you're doing a vine, usually the soft growth on the end is you'll see a whole line of aphids lined up like it's a you know, snack counter, um, just all there at the end, because that's the tender growth that they can pierce and suck, where the woody stem down here is not where you're going to find them. That's just too much work. So they're not going there. So if you would rinse them off, it's a 3 week cycle. Do it for 3 weeks. What I have found, what I add to my plants to discourage aphids is worm castings. Yes, instead of like a fertilizer, just put it on the top, and every time you water, the plant will take it in. But in the worm castings, there is without getting too technical, there is a chemical that once the piercing sucking take it in, they're done. So uh, in my greenhouse, the plants that are most susceptible to insect damage, to that type of damage, when I'm planting them, as soon as they go in, everything gets covered with worm castings. So every time I water, they take it in, and I have no problem whatsoever in my greenhouse with things like aphids, because I know what plants they're most attracted to, and I ensure that they're not going to be lunching there. No, put it on, and anytime you use an organic fertilizer, it's not instant. It takes a while. So when you have a plant and you say, "Oh, this little puppy always has problems with aphids," put your worm castings just on the top is fine. You don't need to disturb the roots. And every time you water, the plant will take it in, and it becomes part of the system of the plant. Once it's in there, it's in there. Yeah. Um, it's hard to say because you can't control the amount of water. You can't. I mean, it's an organic fertilizer that will dissipate and be washed away. But if it's contained in a pot, where you have control over moisture and you have control over erosion, that kind of thing, it works great. So I would say if you're growing house plants and you're having problem with those piercing, sucking insects, get to know some worm castings. It's beautiful stuff. It takes care of a lot of problems. I feel that it's not good. I know people tout that as um, an organic fix, but it really isn't. If you research neem oil a little bit, you'll find that it's not really desirable. We have to be careful and be willing to sacrifice a few plants instead of sacrificing the pollinators. I mean, we're quite arrogant, aren't we? Um, well, because if I was selling neem oil, I would tell you the benefits of it. Remember who's selling it. Research it a little bit. Okay, yeah, I myself do not use neem oil. I have people that say, oh, you should use it in your orchard and use it here and use it there. It's still not something, although it is from organic sources. I have to say, uh, I do not use neem oil. Okay, I am more inclined to watch how much water you give a plant, where you place the plant, what kind of light you give the plant, how you prune the plant. It's called husbandry. Husbandry. To take care of, to nurture, to grow. And it's an art form.
Is it a bad idea to put your husband outside?
Oh no, it's a great idea. They love it.
Well,
They
that's
grow.
where I play all the bugs.
Yeah, of course you do. But when you know that they're coming in, that might be a good time to repot them before you move them in. You know, but that 3 week system of knowing that's their system is 3 weeks. Um, if I bring something from a foreign place, I very often will quarantine it before I let it go with my other plants. That's a thought too. But be willing to sacrifice. I marched that one plant right to the dumpster. You know what I mean? And it broke my heart. It was terrible. But perhaps you can take cuttings and propagate from them. Um, and if you have a big plant that's succumbed, find a healthy part and begin to nurture that into, you know what I mean? Sometimes it's time to go. Yeah.
And we've not had very much success to propagate my bay bush. It's become
Bay takes a lot of time. Anytime I bought bay, my friend Roger Logie, who was my mentor, the Logie family very famous in the herb world, yeah. And Roger was the youngest of 10 children, and so his family, very close friends of mine. So when I hung out in the greenhouse, I have my own key to get in and hang out with them. Um, yeah, he's the only one I ever bought bay from because he could propagate it. It takes patience. It takes patience and it takes time. So, do we have like a minute for propagating or are we done? What do we got for time?
You're at like 34.
Okay. So propagation, I'm just gonna do quickly. There's, well, no, we'll do propagation at another class when we're doing propagating. Okay, my pleasure. So, good luck with houseplants. Be bold and just remember to pay attention to the balance of water, temperature, and light. Yeah,
One other question.
sure.
What do you think about spraying a plant with like alcohol and water combination?
Yeah, you can do that. But remember, it's going to be 3 weeks.
Yeah.
You need a like alcohol will take care of things like scale, that kind of thing. But it takes 3 weeks, and you must do the whole plant. So you know,
So alcohol and water.
Yeah.
Than-
yeah, and that's fine. Okay. Anything else I can answer for you? I know you all have busy.
What about potting soil? Do you have, are they equal?
Yeah,
or-
so potting soil, depending on what the plant needs, choose your potting soil. Sand in a potting soil is heavy, but it's warm and it drains quickly. Perlite is good for breaking up the plants so that there's more porosity, it's more porous. Um, I would say do not use garden soil. Use a potting mix. Use a potting mix, and you can mix it yourself. I wish we had time to cover that, but an hour is not much time. So if I can help you, always give a call to my place. But otherwise, I'll be here Monday, every Monday for the next few weeks. And good luck on your house plans.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Got a million questions, but I'll save.
I'm sure.